In this video, we're gonna cover how lawyers and law firms can sign up clients fast and free, which is a killer combination. In fact, everything in this video is going to make everyone's lives 1,000 times easier. Trust me, I did the math and it came out to 1,000 times exactly. Welcome to Law Venture. My name's Jarrett Stone, and I'm the owner of Stone Firm PLC, which is a law firm that is 100% virtual. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because the video you're watching this very second is part of a series of content that's being released all devoted to virtual law firms. If you're interested in going virtual, or if you're curious on what that all basically requires, and if you want to see how I started my virtual law firm for under $2,000 and how I only pay less than $125 per month to keep the virtual law firm up and running, then I recommend that you go down below and you check out the ultimate guide on how to start a virtual law firm. So with this video, we're going to focus on the most fundamental and foundational aspect to any law firm, which is signing up a client. Whether you have a virtual law firm or whether you have a traditional law firm, it doesn't really matter, because in order to have a successful law firm at all, you need to have clients. And the best way to increase your essentially conversion to turning potential clients into clients is to eliminate any resistance, to eliminate any hurdles that those potential clients may have when it comes to getting signed up. So in this video, we're going to eliminate all hurdles that are out there. We're going to make this extremely simple and extremely easy for all parties involved. So let's identify the problem with a concrete example. And the best way to probably do that is for me to just share my own experiences. Typically, whenever I was in the process of signing up a potential client, and what I mean by this is I've already talked to the person on the phone, I've already had the Q&A, and I've already determined that I can help this person and I'd be happy to represent them. So with all that aside, essentially what I would tell them is that I'm gonna send them an email with some documents for them to fill out and return to me, and that way I can get started on their case. I'll be formally representing them. And so what I would do in that situation is I would upload the documents, basically the contract, the medical authorization form, and the intake form, all on an email, and then I'd send the email and ask for them to print it and then sign it, fill it out, and then scan it back to me. I know what you may be thinking. Okay, that seems simple enough. You just print it, you sign it, you scan it, and you return it. I thought the same thing, but experience ended up showing that most people, they don't have a printer. And if they did have a printer, it didn't work. And a lot of people don't have a scanner. And if they did have a scanner, it definitely didn't work. So what happened in a lot of situations was that people were forced to maybe use the printer at their office, or maybe at a UPS store or at a Staples, and then try and fill everything out there so they could eventually turn around and scan it from their office or a UPS store or at a Staples or Office Max or something like that. And that just was a huge inconvenience for all these potential clients that I'm trying to turn into actual clients. And so without actually realizing it, I was putting these hurdles in place to where some people, they were a little embarrassed that they didn't have a printer or a scanner. Some people may have been a little annoyed or a little frustrated with the process because not only were they injured, but essentially their own lawyer or future lawyer or soon-to-be lawyer was creating more problems for them up front. And maybe one person in all the years I've practiced has essentially said, yeah, this is too much, I'm out. Once I started recognizing the problem, I tried to come up with the best solution, and essentially the next step was for me to put a Band-Aid on the whole thing. And what I mean by that was, whenever I started signing up clients, I essentially would give them two options. One, you can scan it back if you have a printer and scanner that ends up working. Or two, you can print it and leave it with your treating provider. And the rationale there was, since I handle personal injury cases, more often than not, most clients are still treating with their doctor. And because of that, they're going and seeing their doctor maybe once a week, multiple times a week, but fairly regularly, to where they can just go in, drop off the paperwork, and then they'd let me know. And then I'd go visit the doctor's office, say hi to the doctor, maybe see if there were any other referrals they want to send me. And then also pick up the paperwork, bring it back, and then scan it, and then have that copy. But then as more cases were being signed up, I realized that I was having to spend more and more time going and picking up the paperwork And even though it was nice to really be able to talk shop with the doctors, sometimes the doctors were busy, and so it basically was me being an errand boy at times, and that wasn't the best use of my time, especially as, basically cases were coming in at a faster rate. So I needed a more permanent solution that would make things easier for everyone. But instead of just telling you what the solution is, I would much rather show you. That way you can see how simple and easy everything is. So to do that, let's go ahead and turn on the computer. Okay, so we are on the computer, and wow, we just happen to be on the ultimate guide to virtual law firms. I don't know how we got here, but let's go ahead and head over to PandaDoc. I recommend that you sign up. It's free to do so. And once you are signed up, you'll see the dashboard right here. And once you're ready to sign a client up, all you need to do is go ahead and find the document that needs to be signed or filled out. And in this situation, here is our contract that we want to be signed by this potential client, soon to be client. And so what you need to do or have in advance is the person's email. And so if you're on the phone with them originally, I do recommend that you ask while on the phone what their email is and make sure you take it down correctly. And in doing so, we're gonna take this email right here and copy it right here. And the first name of this person is, and it just so happens the last name is that. So we'll go ahead and click continue. Here's our handy dandy contract. And so in this situation, it's just as simple as dragging and dropping exactly what you want. And I'll kind of show you the fine details right here. So the first thing with this particular contract is we want them to type in their name. And so we want to make sure that they do so we can make it required. And obviously that's automatically selected here. Multi-line text, we do not need that because they're just writing their name. And in order for them to get kind of the hint of what they're doing in this situation, we want it to be extra clear. So to do that, we can simply type, which is their name. And then let's go ahead and add another content box, signature, and you can make it as narrow or as long as you would like. Again, you can always click here for the properties. It's required, and you can assign it to the particular person. So let's say you're a personal injury lawyer who's representing a whole bunch of people who were injured on a bus. If you're all signing up under the same contract, then you could essentially have multiple people signing their designated areas, essentially. And we're gonna do something very similar like we did earlier. And we're going to click properties, multi-line text, no. Done. And then one final easy step. This one, properties, make sure it's required. And so because it is required, that's going to, or PandaDoc that is going to require the person who's signing to fill out every aspect that you included in these fields. And so if they want to skip maybe this first part, they're not going to be able to. At least they're not gonna be able to complete the contract without skipping it. And so PandaDoc will take them step by step through the process to make sure everything's complete. And when it comes to completing things on our end, the next step that I like to do is click send document, and I do share via link. You click generate links here, copy, and be sure to note that this is going to this particular address. And so in this situation, I'll go ahead and head over to my email. I typically like to do something like that actually to make it abundantly clear that this is the hyperlink for them. And then I add the hyperlink there, contract recipients. So let's get that email address one more time. And then more often than not, if we're being hyper technical, I'll go through a little bit of a recap of what I had already told the potential client of what all's in the contract. and then also keep it short enough to where it's not overwhelming. But by having something like this to where it's just a simple click, it makes it extremely simple, extremely easy. But if you are sending an email to multiple people, make sure that it's clear who's clicking what to make sure that the link is associated with a particular person's email address that should be signing. I think that made sense, but you may need to replay the last like 10 seconds again in order for it to make even more sense. But anyways, let's go ahead and send this bad boy and get this person signed up. So as we can see, the email went through. We have it right here, and then here is the click here to sign the contract. So I'll do just that. So as you can see, we have the contract name right here, and then all we have to do is simply click start and type in the name, click next, signature. We can use the one that PandaDoc has essentially adopted, or we can draw, which heck, I haven't actually tried this feature, so let's just go ahead and try it. This is a little bit more difficult than I was picturing. Boom, done. And then we'll finish the next step. And the final step. We'll go ahead and select today, which is when this is being recorded, and click finish. Here's what's really cool about all of this is as the potential client is doing, well, I guess client now, is doing all the signing and filling out, PandaDoc is alerting me, the lawyer, of what all's happening in order for me to essentially stay in tune with where the client is during this process. And this is extremely important. So as we can look over here, I have 3 new emails. It has the view email, the completed email, and completed by all participants. And since it's only one person, this one's a little bit of overkill. But I love this feature. It may be something to where you're like, okay, you know, big whoop, I'm getting 3 emails out of this. But there are times where I've sent this document or a contract or a medical authorization form over to a potential client, but I only get 1 email alert, which is that they viewed the document. Then I wait 24 hours, and if they haven't signed the document at that point, I typically follow up with either a phone call or an email asking them if they have any questions, if they have any concerns, if there's anything I can address in order to maybe alleviate those concerns. And more often than not, actually 100% of the time thus far, but knock on wood, the client will end up saying, well, yeah, I looked at the paperwork and then I thought this or I thought that. I don't know how I'm gonna pay for the attorney's fees or how this works or how that works. Then I just answer the question and I alleviate that concern. And then the client will say, okay, I'll go and knock it out right now. Or whenever I get home, I'll sign the document. And then they end up signing the document. But by having this extra alert feature of knowing when they view it, that puts me a little bit on notice if there is any hesitation or if there is any potential concern so I can address it. And now we can see the actual document itself. At this point, we can scroll and make sure everything is filled out. Boom, 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 and boom. So all we need to do at this point is really just click download and save file. And that way we have a copy saved and you can make sure it goes to the right folder or the right location that it needs to go to. But let's go ahead and take a quick look to see what it actually looks like. So after downloading the contract, I went ahead and opened it up with PDF Expert. By the way, I do highly recommend that you check out PDF Expert. I have an entire analysis about why PDF Expert is the best PDF app out there. The biggest reason, hands down, is because it's a one-time super low payment versus a lot of the other major PDF apps that you've heard of require an annual subscription. And over time, that just financially doesn't make sense. But this is me kind of going off on a tangent. Let's go ahead back into the computer, back into the PDF. And as you can see, this is exactly how it should look based on the signatures and based off of PandaDoc. And then we also get a signature certificate, which has the email, which helps verify everything, and it makes everything super kosher. As you just saw, it is extremely easy to use PandaDoc in order to get your potential clients turned into actual clients by signing and filling out documents. And it's returned to you instantly, and you get the heads up notice, which is fantastic when it comes to closing. And here's the kicker. Doing everything that I just did is absolutely free on PandaDoc. I highly recommend that you use it. I highly recommend that you make your life easier. And most importantly, I highly recommend that you make your clients' lives easier. But we're not done yet. There's still one more step that I really want to walk you through and stress the importance of. Another important aspect to signing up clients has to do with the intake form, AKA the questionnaire. And there are multiple reasons why the intake form is extremely important, especially in my situation, is because I strategically try and keep the initial phone conversation with potential clients to the bare essentials. My goal with that conversation is, one, to establish a rapport with the person who I'm talking to establish that connection, and two, to ask the least amount of questions possible to figure out whether or not I can help this particular person. And the reason why I try and keep the conversation as short as possible is because I don't want to overwhelm the person I'm talking to, because most likely they're going through something traumatic, and most likely they are, I don't know, taking time off of work, taking time out of their lives to give me a call. And if they're calling me, more often than not, they're already interested in being represented. And so if I were to try and turn around and ask every single question under the sun that I need information to, including the small details like asking for claim numbers, asking for birth dates and locations and addresses and times, that's going to absolutely overwhelm the individual. They're gonna have to say, okay, 1 second, let me go find this, let me go find that. I think it's this number, I think it's that number. Can I get back to you? It just isn't going to be a very productive phone call. So that's whenever you want to start relying on your intake forms. But the problem I ran into initially when it came to the print, fill out, scan, and return was that a lot of people, again, didn't have a printer, didn't have a scanner. But then I would try and format, and actually did format the PDF that I sent to where they could just type in their answers on the PDF document for the intake form. But again, they ran into the same printing and scanning issues. And a lot of people, even though I made it very clear that they can type their answers, would always handwrite their answers as well. And that resulted in me not being able to read the handwriting, or they would skip important information for reasons unknown. And so I looked for a solution, and fortunately, I found that solution. And once again, I'm not gonna tell you the solution. Instead, I'm gonna show you, and that requires us to turn on the laptop one more time. Okay, so we are back in the laptop, and look guys, I'm not gonna even act like I left this page open. I just want you to see how adorable our puppy is. This is Mabel, and she is just extremely photogenic. It's a little embarrassing about how she just makes everyone look bad in photos, but anyways, let's put that aside. Let's get out of Instagram and go over to Google Forms. Now, there's one thing I do wanna say about this. So Google gives you two options here. Option number one is the free option, the ultimate balling on the budget option, which is that if you have a personal Gmail account, you can link your soon-to-be intake form to that personal Gmail account. I'm pretty sure that if you go the free route though, you'll have some limitations in what you can do with your intake form. You'll have to do a little bit of extra research on that because Google's kind of updating Google Forms as it goes along. Now, option number two is to simply use Google Forms that comes with your G Suite account if you have a business account with Google. For those that don't know, I highly recommend G Suite. It's what I use in order to have my business email address, in order to have all the perks that come with G Suite. And this isn't a sponsored post by any means, but if you don't know what comes with G Suite, especially at its affordable price, then definitely go over and check out the ultimate guide to starting a virtual law firm, where I break down exactly what comes with G Suite and which tools you can use to go virtual. But when it comes to the purpose of this video, I plan on using my G Suite account and creating this new intake form with the business account. And so if you're maybe trying to follow along with a personal and free account, you may see some discrepancies, but that's more of a heads up, and I doubt it's gonna be too much of a limitation overall. So the easiest way to get started is with a template, and I recommend maybe trying to get oriented with Google Forms by starting with a template. And at this point, you're ready to go. You're ready to start creating your intake form. And if you want to start with the appearance of it, then just go up here to customize theme. And this is where you can upload a header image that connects more to your law firm. There's obviously a whole bunch of different options right here that you can choose from, or if you want to make it more personal, you can upload a photo as well. So we're uploading a quick photo, and as you can see, it gives you the option to crop the photo in a way that works best with Google Forms and your photo. As you can tell, you have quite the limitations here. In fact, this is the photo that I used on my actual intake form, and I'm not sure if I'm married to it, but essentially this is what I ended up doing on the actual intake form. So I'll click done here just so you can see the example. And sadly, I missed the little gavel, which is actually in the back of this video. Okay, so the next step with the photo in place is to start really with your introduction. We'll say Stone Firm PLLC intake form, or if you want to make it a little bit more, I guess, approachable to where it's like, new client form or something like that. Do whatever you want to do. And then always, at least I think this, be sure to be extra and abundantly clear on what people are doing. So a great thing to do is to put instructions up at this header so that the person, whoever's filling it out, knows exactly what they need to be doing as they fill out this form. And one big thing is to let the person know that they can always answer with a not applicable or I don't know, because as you'll see, there are situations where you can make information required, and so even though you may want them to answer, there may be situations where they simply can't answer it because they don't know, and you don't want the person to freak out because they don't know and they think they should know. So I simply have a little bit of a welcome message with mine, and then that welcome message goes into a little bit of instructions, and the instructions mention if something doesn't apply, put this. If you don't know, say, I don't know why I stopped there. I don't know. And then there's a little bit of a send off that I have with my contact information to where it says contact me here. And then it's, it has a little bit of a signature, right? So most likely you're gonna need your client's name, and that's super simple, super short here. By the way, you can change the color. You can kind of change the appearance of it overall. But let's get a little bit more specific. So here we have the name. You can change this to whatever you want it to be. Google will try and anticipate the answer or the type of answer that you're needing. And so if it was a describe what happened question, then Google will, at this point in time, I guess, keep it short answer, but there's times where Google will go to paragraph, which gives people the option to, basically have multiple paragraphs in their answers. And this is just your little sub instructions that I recommend that you always end up having. So, if you have name, they may just want to put Jarrett in the answer. But if you want to make sure that their full name is included, this is the best way to do that. And then this right here is where you can make it required. And if you end up wanting to just scrap it as a whole, you can always do that. And so let's just go ahead and move on. As you can see, there's email, there's phone number, what position you're interested in when it comes to this job application doesn't really apply to our intake form. So let's just go ahead and start making changes here. Let's assume this is a car wreck, and we'll keep this one extremely simple. Explain how the wreck occurred. And then in this, with these answers, you can again, go with a paragraph, and that way they'll answer it, and then they'll click, if you make it required, they'll have to answer it. And one thing that, at least in the personal injury world, that I end up doing is asking for claim information. So let's say the at-fault claim number, and then I'll keep this as a short answer, and I make sure it's not required, because there are times where the wreck occurred maybe the day before the person called me, the day before they're filling this out, and so they haven't set up a claim. They want me to do all that. That's fine. And so in this situation, I don't want them to be stuck on the required, even though they could technically put the not applicable or I don't know or I don't have it. I just don't want them to feel like they're not doing this correctly just simply because it's not required. Or there are times where the questionnaire at certain portions is tailored to, let's say, a passenger and not a driver. In that situation, certain questions are going to apply to certain people, so I don't want them to have to answer every single one that may go down a different trail that doesn't apply to them. So what's important here, and I think you understand the concept at this point, is that you can have multiple sections. And so with multiple sections, essentially how this is going to appear from the perspective of the person filling out the intake form is they're going to only see section 1 initially. And then once they've completed section 1, that'll take them to section 2, which will then go ahead and essentially look just like this. And what I always like to do, at least with my intake form, is to make sure, or I guess give a little perspective about how far into the intake form they are and how much longer they have to go, so it doesn't feel like they're having to take the bar exam and answering all these questions that take the entire day. And that way there's a little bit of a finish line that they're going towards, and there's basically a progress bar that they can follow along with. But that's essentially it. And I do recommend that you come over here, and that's actually not where I'm wanting to go. Go over to responses and then go to these 3 dots, not those 3 dots, and make sure you click get email notifications for new responses. I think this is extremely important because just like with PandaDoc, I want to have the convenience of being notified when somebody is done with either signing a document or done with the intake form. That way I don't have to keep refreshing and looking to see if there are responses if the client is done. So let's pivot a little bit, because thus far what I've talked about when it comes to intake forms is basically having your intake form being sent to the potential client on the back end. In other words, you've spoken with the person, you've essentially filtered out whether or not you can handle that person's case, whether you want to handle that person's case, and they've survived that little filtering process through the phone call, and now you want to get that person signed up. That's on the back end. I also use intake forms on the front end as well. What I mean by that is if you go on my website, you won't see any contact information on my website. No phone numbers, no addresses. This is, I think, highly unusual for a law firm, but this is what I've decided to do. The reason for that is I don't want salespeople going on my website, finding the phone number and calling the office line nonstop over and over again to where it's just burning hours, burning time. It's not a very effective use of my time. And what I've also realized working for another firm before going solo is that even if you make it abundantly clear on your website the kind of cases you handle and the kind of cases you don't handle, people will still give you a phone call hoping that you'll make an exception for their particular case. And unfortunately, that just isn't a very productive use of time either. And that can actually really build up, because it's surprising how many people will still call the law firm even though they know you don't handle the particular case. And then that just gets messy. So what I end up doing in my particular situation, and we can flesh this out in more detail in another video about how I put these systems in place on my website, is that I use a questionnaire that ends up funneling into the intake form that we were kind of making in this on the laptop. And with the questionnaire, maybe it's like 4 or 5 questions. And in those 4 or 5 questions, I can tell whether or not I'm interested in the case. And what ends up happening is, based on the answers, each answer takes that person to a particular response. And the response may be, sorry, I don't handle this. Sorry, this is why I don't handle it. Or if I'm interested, it's like, hey, fill out this questionnaire and somebody's going to be in contact with you very shortly. And then some other, extra information as well. And so in that situation, the questionnaire or the quiz ends up funneling to this intake form to where the people who are answering and filling out this intake form are high quality cases. Those are cases that I'm definitely interested in. And that gives me the information up front for me to then follow up the email notification that comes from Google Forms to that person with a phone call. And then we essentially are doing almost the reverse order of what we've already talked about, but it's still equally as effective. Whew, okay, that was a lot just to boil it down to the simple fact that you need to check this box to make sure that you get email responses and to make sure you're not having to refresh Google Forms every 5 minutes to see if there are new cases. Okay, so let's make the benefits of Google Forms extra clear by touching on them. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't write down these benefits. I'm just kind of winging this, so I'm about to start listing things off, and I don't know how many benefits there are gonna be, but one, it makes it abundantly clear what the answers are, and that was a big pet peeve of mine, to where if I couldn't read somebody's handwriting, it was just like, what were you thinking? 2, it eliminates the issue involved with printing and scanning. 3, honestly, it looks professional. It gives your law firm a very professional feel, especially if you customize it with pictures of you and or your law firm. 4, it makes sure that people fill out things that essentially is required or is important. I can't tell you how many times people skip very important information and I have to go back to them and ask for that very important information. But with Google Forms, you can check the required box, makes it super simple. 5, very cost effective. Whether you're going for the free option or if you're going for the G Suite option, you're gonna get extreme bang for your buck, or I don't know what the phrase is with balling on a budget. We'll say balling on a budget for free. I think we're on 6. It is super efficient when it comes to getting email notifications. Automation is key, especially with a virtual law firm, especially if you're solo. That's a big plus. And I can't think of a 7 right now, but if I think of a 7 and any other numbers, I'll put those in the comment section down below. If you find out any benefits that I haven't mentioned, leave those in the comments down below. And I'm not done with this video. Typically when people start talking about comments, they are wrapping the video up. But there's one drawback I have to say when it comes to Google Forms, which is that whenever you look at the responses and you're like, okay, client's all done, they're signed up, let's go ahead and print this so I have a paper record or a digital PDF record of their responses that I can refer back to. Google basically got real lazy, because whenever you save as PDF, you essentially no longer have the customization, you no longer have the colors, you no longer have the theme. Instead, you essentially have a white page with a black box or I'll say a box with a black line around it, not a full-on black box. And then you just have your text and it looks really, honestly, generic. And so there's nothing special about that. And make sure whenever you do save as PDF, at least to date, the best way to save as PDF the Google Forms answers is, as you couldn't tell earlier, landscape and not portrait. But typically what I end up doing is taking the information that I end up saving, putting it on the client's Excel file. That way I have all the information and it's auto-populating other things as well. But just a little food for thought when it comes to one drawback. Okay, so that sums up this video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or ideas for future videos that you think will be helpful not only to you, but to other Law Venture community members and subscribers, then let me know in the comment section down below. And if you made it this far, be sure to hit the like button. I think it's right over there. And if you haven't subscribed, come on, get on it. Man, my Texas twang came out there. All right, I'll see y'all in the next video.